Hi. Yeah.
OpenLedger offers an end-to-end framework for AI, from data to edges. What makes your stack different from other AI infrastructure platforms?
So if you take a look at any other platforms out there which like provide like fine tuning, they don't enable attribution, right? People who contribute data, they don't get rewarded as part of the process. So we want to enable users to get rewarded if they contribute data to an AI model. That's the first thing. That's what is going to incentivize more and more people to contribute. The second aspect, these models are much more open and auditable on top of OpenLedger. If let's say an enterprise is using an AI model which is built on top of us, based on the inference, we'll be able to figure out which data is causing that inference, and so you have an end-to-end audit. So anything happens with the AI, let's say you use an AI, use it for a good, and something goes wrong, the agent goes wrong, you'll be able to trace back which data is causing that particular inference, and you'll be able to figure out what is that poisonous data and you remove that. So models are much more open and auditable on top of OpenLedger. So these are two major differences compared to other platforms out there, and that's our unique selling point, right?
OpenLedger introduces proof of attribution as a breakthrough mechanism. How does this reshape value distribution across data, model, and agent contributions?
So what really happens, like more to add to the first question that we answered, whenever someone contributes data, we make sure that each data point is on chain. And an AI model pretty much is trained on hundreds and thousands of data sets that's being contributed, right? I'm talking about just a specialized model, not a large language, because the data set over there is much larger. But in a specialized model layer, when data set is fine-tuned on top of a model, we actually figure out which data is getting into that model, figure out the context as well. We figure out how a data is basically interpreting inside a model and then output comes in. So now what we have is which data point caused that inference and what kind of context made this model to give that particular inference as well. So based on that, now we can say, okay, your data was useful and it had this much of impact in this particular output, and someone else was data was 30%, you have 50% and stuff like that. And based on the revenue that comes in, we would split accordingly. So what we are essentially doing here is to encourage more and more better specialized models to be built. And the only way you get a specialized model is by collecting the right data sets for that. In a larger language model, data is more, basically internet data. You just scrape out of the internet. You need a lot of compute. There's a lot of moving parts there. But in a specialized model, the model is already there. You're just superimposing with more data. So the data contributor has to be rewarded as part of the process. And that's why you use attribution to figure out whose data was actually impactful. So it's kind of gamified. So people would actually contribute valuable data. Only if they contribute valuable data, they're going to get paid for it. Like how you would contribute content to YouTube, and if your quality of your content was good, then you're going to get rewarded for it, right? Very similarly, if your quality of your data was good in an AI model, you will get paid for it. So that's what we use attribution for, to just figure out which data was useful and then reward them accordingly.
OpenLedger is working with players like Trust Wallet, Dubai Tax Authority, and Kite. What does this co-building look like in your ecosystem, and how do you support these use cases?
Yeah, there are two parts to OpenLedger. One is the community, where we would want the community to participate and build AI models on top of this. Apart from that, we also have enterprises that we work with as well. So on the enterprise side, it's not about data, it's more about the internal data that they have, and they build an AI model using those internal data they have, right? They could go ahead and use any fine-tuning platform. But again, as we spoke before, but they don't have any kind of auditability of how this model works. They want to actually know how a model is interpreting a data. So if something goes wrong, they can actually go back, audit, and figure out what went wrong. Or if something goes good, right? You use data and you build a model, and an actual model had a very accurate answer, is actually impactful. Then you can add more data sets for that. You can collect more of those data sets. So that's what enterprises use us for, because it's much more transparent. It's on an immutable record. They can verify it anytime. They can know how the model works. So basically, we are kind of like models of black boxes. We're kind of like making sure that at least on the fine-tune layer, it's not a black box. It's more transparent.
Yeah, and the last question. You're enabling a decentralized exchange for tokenized AI models. How will this unlock liquidity, composability, and new business models in the AI space?
Yeah, so these are ecosystems that are building on top of OpenLedger to make sure that we have more liquidity, more users, access. Obviously, people are building AI models. We would want the community to experiment and build AI models, have them, give them an opportunity to monetize. Launching models itself is a monetizing way, but we would also want them to bootstrap and have much better growth in terms of building a company. The model is the company for them, right? So we want to enable them to tokenize these models so that they can actually have revenue flowing in. They could use that for much access to the model. They can have more community participate. Community can be part of it. That's the overall idea. So that's why we have ecosystems building all these sort of works.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.